Dear friends, welcome back to Automate with Rakesh. In my previous video, you have seen the demo of remote debugging. But after watching the demo, is it enough for you to get ready for the exam? I don't think so. I have to cover so many important points in this video. So in this video, I will just focus on the very important points. Now let's start. The very first important point for remote debugging. How you access remote debugging? You go to debug tab and come to remote debugging. And here there's an option called configure remote debugging. Now the questions can have, you might get questions. What are the different types of connection types available? What are the different connection types available for remote debugging? Now here your answers are remote machine and unattended setup. Remember, very important point, connection type. The question may come around connection type. So what are the two connections type we have? One is remote machine and the second connection name is unattended. Okay, exact word if you want, unattended robot. Clear? So these are the two connection types, remote machine and the second one is unattended robot. Okay, be very clear about the connection type. So this is first point. Second point, what is the other set of questions may occur? Now let's go back to UiPath Academy remote debugging chapter. In this, scroll down and come here, set up remote debugging. Now here in this page, set up remote debugging, scroll down and come to this particular table. This table contains lot of important points which you must understand and should be able to remember for the exam. Now let's see. To run or debug a project remotely using remote machine. So we understood there are two different types of connections which we saw. What are the two different types? One is remote machine type and unattended robot. Now we are talking about remote machine type. If you are going for the connection type remote machine, for both of this I have given demo. In case you have not watched those demo, please do watch them. Now I'm talking about remote machine in this video. All the important points for the remote machine. Okay, now remote machine. To run or debug a project remotely using a remote machine connection, you should, and these are the important points, and I'm going to cover all of them. Make sure that what are the conditions required? So let me open my notepad. So second thing, we have to be careful about the condition. So what are the condition? First is, what are the condition? TCP IP connectivity exists between the studio machine and a remote machine. So what is that? TCP IP connectivity exists between the studio machine and remote. So what is the meaning? Let's say both the remote are in the same network so that they can be connected, right? You should be able to take a remote of that. You should be able to see, it is there in the same network and there is a connectivity place. So I can take a remote of that machine anytime I want. Okay, that is the meaning. So TCP IP connectivity exists between studio machine, your developer laptop machine, and the remote machine. This is the very first point. 2.2, these are the two conditions. The remote robot is the same version as studio. Let's say your studio version, for example, if I come here, the studio version is 2023.10.3. Now this studio version should be exactly, if you go to your remote machine and check the version of the assistant and click on help, these two versions should be the local machine studio version and the remote machine, remember remote machine UiPath assistant version should match. Okay, the robot version should match. So what is the second important point that we have learned? The remote robot is the same version as studio. Very important point to remember. If any question is framed around this, you should know which to pick. Okay, the robot version and the TCP, so both of the remote machine and studio machine should be in the same network, or if it is a different network also, there should be a TCP IP connectivity can coexist. Okay, so these are the two conditions that you have learned. Now third point, how you set up, how do you configure. The questions can come, what are the steps included to configure a remote machine. So for a remote machine, okay, remember this point, a remote machine, this is important point. The connection type is what? Remote machine. Okay, so the question is, how would you configure a remote machine? What are the steps? Okay, let me write the steps for you one by one. 3.1. The very first step is, before the remote robot can be used for debugging, the UiPath Remote Debugging Agent utility on the machine must be configured. I have shown that in the demo. Okay. Now the very first step is, you go to this particular path in command prompt, or this particular, there are two paths. Okay. Either if you have done a per machine installation, this demo I have given. In case you are not understanding what is per user, you should watch my previous videos where I've shown these things. So then what happens? Your program files will be kept. If you are done a per machine installation, then your files will be there under program files. If you have done a per user installation, then your files will be there in local app data programs. This is the path. So what you have to do, you have to go to, so in the command, you have to open command prompt, and type cd and any of this path, for example this. So you are entering into this path in the command prompt. We copy this again, copy and paste. So this is your very first step. So this program files UiPath Studio, it could be this if your installation is per machine. If not, you should copy paste this one if it is per user installation. So what is the aim of going inside that? That I'll cover in the 3.2. So all this demo I have given, if you have seen the demo, then this makes sense. 3.2. After you have done there, then you have to run a command. What is this command? Look at this command. I'm going to copy it from here. And I'm talking all about in Windows. Okay. So this is the command you have to run. UiPath Remote Debugging Agent.exe. This exe file is available in this path. That's why we are going into this particular path and trying to run the command. What is the command? UiPath Remote Debugging Agent.exe enable. We are trying to enable it. Port number. So here the port number that we have to pass is 8573, and you can set your password of your choice. I'll set 123 let's say, and verbose. So this is the command I have to run in CMD. This I have to run in CMD command prompt. Okay, so once you run, what would happen? Once you run, this output will come. This also I have shown you, practically I have shown in the previous video. So now what is the next step? 3.3 is following message get displayed. What is that? Agent online and waiting for commands. That means your connection is established. Okay, so this step is done in the remote machine. Steps are done in the remote machine configuration part. So this is one part. Now steps are done in the remote machine, and these are the steps. Pretty clear. Very important point. If questions are framed, what are the right order of the steps? Then you should know. First you should go to command prompt in the remote machine, go to a particular path, either program files or local app data, and then you have to run a command to open the port and enable it. And enable what? UiPath Remote Debugging. And then you are setting a password, and the following message displayed, agent online and waiting command. So once this is done, now the next steps will be done in Studio. Steps done in Studio. Okay, so what are the steps done in the Studio? Let me show you. What is the step that are done in Studio? Set up a connection to the remote robot. So how do you set up a connection? You go to Studio, and here you go to debug. You click on remote debugging. Click on configure remote debugging, and here you will select what? Remote machine. You will enter the IP address of the remote machine. You enter the port as 8573, and the password that you have set in the command, whatever it is, you need to enter that here. 1 2 3 1 2 3, and then you will test connection and save it. Test connection and save it. This demo I have given. Now once you do that, what would happen? Your connection setup is done from your studio to the remote robot. And the next thing, make sure remote execution is enabled. So remote execution is enabled. Run or debug the project. Remote execution enabled means what? This one. If I cancel this, this should be enabled. So this should be in gray in color. If it is not in gray color, that means remote debugging is not enabled. So it should be gray in color. So this is enabled. Okay. And the third step is run or debug the project. This is pretty simple in the studio part. So I'll copy the steps, and steps to be done I'm mentioning here. Okay. Step number 1, you set up the connection I showed you. 2, make sure remote execution is enabled, and then after that you run and debug. Pretty simple steps. Now the very important part, what I am expecting is very important out of all this is this: meet the conditions for the remote robot. Okay, these conditions are important. So remember, this is a very important question. Meet the conditions. So what are the conditions? Really, what are those conditions? So initially we have seen some 2 conditions called TCP/IP connectivity exists between studio machine and remote machine. The remote robot is the same version as studio. This is simple. But there are actually few conditions. Let me show you what are they. Here, look at this. If interactive authentication is enforced in Orchestrator. Now, what is the meaning of interactive authentication? First, I should show you. Let me go to Orchestrator. I'll go to tenants. I'll go right, click on settings. I'll click on robot security. Now, if you see, earlier in the older version, it was slightly different. Now it is slightly different. The current edition of cloud, it has become hybrid. But if you see for the attended robot, there's an option called interactive sign-on SSO. Requires user to sign in into the assistant and studio to Orchestrator and run attended processes. That means using your email address. So like, I have signed in using email address. If you look at my assistant also, I have signed in. Okay. So one way, earlier you have to create a machine key. You have to create a machine and machine key and then enter and establish the connection. But later on, what they have done, they have made it easy to sign in just using your email address to make it simple and easy. Let me show you one of the documentation. Okay. Look at the documentation. Setting up interactive sign-in. Very important point. Why I am showing it? Because this will enhance your understanding. The interactive sign-in feature provides an option to connect Orchestrator, Studio, and UiPath. These are the 3 important components: Orchestrator, Studio, and UiPath Assistant. Using user account. What is the meaning of interactive sign-in? Using the user account. That means your email address and all that. You can. I will write it on top of this. Okay, using the user account, simplifying the process of offering better sync across platforms. Now, why this is required? Let me show you. Benefit of interactive sign-in: instant access to queue asset. Okay, I'll show you the important point. Okay, so look at this, which is being inherited by Orchestrator, removing the need of using license key. Interactive sign-in is a per tenant feature, meaning that it is automatically apply the settings for the new tenant. Okay, here, this is the important point. You no longer need to create individual machines or machine templates for each of the robot. These are created automatically when you go for a single sign-on. Okay, important point. It's in the notepad. So all these points, I will pass it in the description. You can just pick it from there. Okay, so the next point is this. You need to create individual machine or machine template. So without creating machine and machine template, you can sign in. That is the benefit of interactive authentication. Okay, interactive sign-in or interactive authentication. Clear? Now, let me come back to our original point. If interactive authentication is enforced in Orchestrator and you wanted to run or debug an unattended process. So for attended process, it is understandable, right? So you have the interactive sign-in, right? Now for unattended process, what happens? They are saying you wanted to run or debug an unattended process, make sure that the remote robot meets one of the following conditions. So they are saying the question might come, if you wanted to run an unattended process, what are the conditions or which one of the conditions should be met? Okay, so question is unattended process. If you want to run or debug an unattended process, what are the condition or which one of the conditions should be met? So here they are saying make sure that the remote robot meets one of the following conditions. So out of 1, 2, 3, any one it should meet. So now you can imagine how the questions can be framed. Remote robot meets one of the following conditions, and what are the conditions? Either one, okay, any one. First is connected to Orchestrator using interactive sign-in. So they are saying your remote robot is connected to Orchestrator using interactive sign-in. So now this interactive sign-in, you can see, right? I mean, in the Orchestrator for the unattended robot, I didn't find it, but here for the attended robot, I find it. Maybe the older version had that. So this exam will be on the older version of 2022, not older, I mean 22.10. In the 22.10 version of Orchestrator, but we are in the cloud, so any changes are being done are reflecting over here, right? So here you can see there's a note, interactive sign-in authentication requires recompiling the workflows that the use Orchestrator activities make. Okay, Orchestrator API have 2020.10 activity package or higher. Now for the exam point of view, I'm just letting you know which one to focus. So this is the point. Remote robot is connected to Orchestrator using interactive sign-in. This could be one option. Okay, that's all. Using interactive sign-in, it should be connected. This is one option. The second option is connected using machine key and user is also signed in. So that means you have connected your UiPath assistant using the machine key, the older setup, and a user is also signed in. So if you look at my setup, okay, so I have connected using service URL, but again you can connect using the, if I sign out, I can connect using the machine key, and also I've signed in. You can see this logo is there, signed in. You can see RK is showing. So it is saying connected using machine key and a user is also signed in from the assistant. This is the second important point for the exam. So this here the question will be framed. If you want to run or debug an unattended process, what should be how the remote robot should be connected? Choose one of the, or choose the right options. So it could be either one of them, or right, either one of them. So remote robot is connected to Orchestrator using interactive sign-in. So only thing you remember is interactive sign-in. Second, connected using machine key and user is also signed in from assistant. And the third point is connected using machine key. So here the same, the previous condition, connected using machine key. So I'm writing MK. Let me write connected using machine key but not signed in. So in this condition, what here he was signed in the assistant, but here it is he is not signed in. If he's not signed in, then there's another additional thing comes is troubleshooting session is enabled in Orchestrator for the machine. Okay, troubleshooting session should be enabled. Now the question comes is how do you enable this troubleshooting session? Now what I've done, I was looking for documentation. I'll pass this particular link, not this one. Yeah, I'll pass this link for the interactive sign-in, and also I'll pass this link in the description of the video. Enabling troubleshooting session for unattended process. So here, as per the steps in the documentation, tenant monitoring unattended session. So this I could not find it when I tried it. So I go here to tenant monitoring and then unattended sessions. So here they were saying just select one of the machine and then enable it. Okay, unattended session from the section drop down menu. Identify the machine where the error occurred, click more actions at the end of the machine row and select configure troubleshooting session, which I was not able to find it out. If you could, let me know in the comment section. So this is what is configure troubleshooting session. So what the point is talking about, in case he's not signed in, you need to enable the troubleshooting session. So this is as per the 2022.10, and your orchestrator that you're using is latest one, 2023 cloud version you are using. So that's why you may or may not be able to find these options, but doesn't matter, you understood the important points. Okay, so this is very important point. And after that, we go back to the documentation. Okay, after that your robot gets connected. So I've shown all of this. Make sure that configure remote agent by enabling the remote debugging agent by going to this path and entering that command. And after that, in the studio I've shown you how do you configure, right? This steps I've shown you, and the last step is meet the conditions. And here are the important points, where the very first important point is either any of this should be true, remote robot is connected to orchestrator using interactive sign-in, okay, or else using machine key and signed in the assistant, or else using machine key but not signed in, but a troubleshooting session is enabled. So these are the 3 important points. I'll pass all of this in the description of the video, which might help you to revise. So thank you guys for watching. Let's meet once again in our next video.